Luke Perry is a professor and chair of the Department of Government and Politics at Utica College, a graduate fellow at the University of Massachusetts, where he earned an MA and a PhD in political science, master's in political science with expertise in American politics and comparative politics. He is the author of the NY22 Minute, which has been going on really since the spring after Claudia Tenney, the spring of 2017, right? When you think about it.
Yeah.
This race has been going on forever between Brindisi and Claudia Tenney. Luke Perry on the line right now. It's getting exciting. Good morning, Luke.
Good morning.
A lot to talk about. I first want to get into, if we could, that the race last night in that special election in Ohio. Does it? First of all, you're doing it in the summertime when people are away on vacation. You're doing it when they know that this is only going to be for a term of about 3 months, and both candidates are going to be on the ballot in November, and you're going to have to do it all over again. Do you think, because Democrats are saying, listen, it's too close to call right now, this is a big indicator of what's going to happen in the midterms. Republicans are saying, the president is saying this is a big victory as they squeak out in a place where there hasn't been a Democrat winning this since before Reagan. So what's your take?
Well, anytime you have somebody who steps down from Congress, the state needs to worry about a vacancy. So you want to fill that. At the same time, as you allude to, it is a waste of money because the person who's elected is not going to be in office very long.
Yeah.
The politics of this is both sides want to win because then they have a incumbency advantage, even if it's just for a few months. That's helpful. The election isn't actually settled yet because there's a recount that'll be triggered, and that will determine ultimately the winner. And now you got both sides positioning based on the result. I think, as you mentioned, having this so close does not bode
I really
well
couldn't do very much at all.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's playing here. Remember, you're live when I have this. Okay, go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to say, I think the close election result does not bode well for Republicans. This is a fairly strong Republican district for some time, and so the analysts are kind of suggesting that if you're a House district with a GOP incumbent, that's what we call R+5 or R+10. That's a partisan rating by Nonpartisan Cook Political Report. It looks like you're in for a tough race, and the NY22 is an R+6 district, so it has implications for us.
All right. Well, let's talk about there's two big issues going on right now in the 22nd. This, of course, is one of the top 10 toss-ups in the country. This is a big race, a lot of money coming in, and a lot of money going out. It's reported that, or maybe it's not even reported, but this is what I'm getting, is that it costs you about $15,000 to see the president on Monday and another $5,000 to get your picture taken. The president coming in to help raise money for Claudia Tenney. How big is that?
It's helpful for her. It fits into her strategy. She certainly has aligned herself with Trump. She's trying to prompt Republican turnout by appealing to his supporters in the district. So if he can come and raise money for her, that'll be the primary mission, it looks like, at this point. That's good. It's not so much that she needs the money. Obviously, that helps. She's behind in terms of Brindisi. She'll have plenty of money for the campaign, but that just doesn't look good, and Republican incumbents across the country are getting outraised. So it'll help offset that a little bit, but I think even more importantly, it'll generate enthusiasm, particularly from diehard Republicans, and that enthusiasm, hopefully, from Tenney's perspective, will prompt them to vote, but even beyond that, hopefully it will get them to volunteer, to better organize, because that's where, behind the scenes, I think the Democrats have an advantage. Their grassroots organization is far superior to what the Republicans are doing right now. So if you bring somebody like Trump in, obviously a sitting president, prominent individual, well-liked by a moderate chunk of Republicans locally, hopefully that can kickstart some of these things that haven't been in full gear yet.
I do have to say that her strategy is all in with the president. Even her commercials use President Trump, saying Claudia Tenney and President Trump, great for America, great for upstate New York. On the other hand, there are a lot of negative spots that are already running, and most of them targeting Anthony Brindisi. I do have to ask you your thoughts on the negative spots. They're really going after the Nancy Pelosi. Here's a quote on some of what is out there. Too liberal. Anthony Brindisi is an ally of corrupt Speaker Silver and handpicked by Nancy Pelosi and Governor Cuomo to run for Congress. Brindisi loyally rubber-stamped Silver's agenda, voting for it over 90% of the time. He's for reckless spending, higher taxes, and gun grabs, by the way, all of which Brindisi says is not true, but the commercials keep running. Is it working?
I think we've seen in the past in midterms for Republicans in 2010 and 2014 a strategy that targets Nancy Pelosi in a way that's been effective. They made big gains in both those elections. The big question is whether that strategy will carry over now that a Republican is in the White House. I think it certainly has some traction in our area. The governor is not particularly well received upstate. The state legislature as a whole, an institution, is not generally looked at highly. Now, that being said, when you think about our individual representatives, Joe Griffo, Anthony Brindisi, people know them. They hold them in high regard in the legislature. But certainly, Tenney's trying to tie Brindisi to Pelosi to the state legislature, and that's going to be the main focus of her messaging when it comes to attacking Brindisi. So I think we'll just continue to see a lot more of that throughout the course of the campaign.
Now I want to switch to Brindisi's ads. He was running an ad that was with his kids, really kind of a couple of positive ads coming out of the gate, which I think were received very well. There's now an attack ad out there. Spectrum is refusing to play the ad. It's very interesting because a broadcast television station, a radio station, could not refuse it by law. However, cable can, and they say anyone that takes an attack, a swipe at their company, they won't run the ad. In the end, it's creating a bit of a story here. Of course, Brindisi out yesterday with a press conference. Is the Spectrum thing? Is this whole attack on Spectrum working for Anthony Brindisi?
It's really interesting as a campaign approach and a campaign issue. In some ways, the NY22 race is a battle of different versions of populism. Populism basically meaning making appeals on behalf of the public at large, particularly against elites. So you've got conservative populism with Tenney, the messaging of Trump, make America great again. You need a political outsider to come in and fix things, right? So we're familiar with that narrative. The Spectrum issue is liberal populism, a unique variant, right? So liberal populism tends to focus on corporations and the perceived negative impact that powerful corporations have on everyday people. And the way Brindisi has operated with this framework is to target Spectrum, cable prices, right, and position himself as someone who's on the side of everyday people who just want to watch TV and they don't want to get ripped off. So it played right into his hands that Spectrum didn't air the ad, because now it's going to get even more attention than it probably would have if it just aired. And from a campaign perspective, the thing I find really interesting: who still has cable? Not people under 40. It's older people who vote, and it's Democrats and it's Republicans. So. I think it's a pretty unique approach, and I think it has some traction. Now, how long that's going to last, I don't know.
Yeah. And what is interesting, though, is this is right out of the Democrat, a liberal playbook. Is that the right move for Anthony Brindisi, who has been looked at here, especially in this area, as a moderate? Now he's on the same campaign that Governor Cuomo is, and Claudia Tenney is out there saying, "Look he's the same as Cuomo. He's the same as Pelosi." Is he playing into their game plan?
That's an interesting question. I think what he's trying to accentuate is that Claudia Tenney has been pretty clearly on the record as someone who supports business. She's repeatedly said that. And he's trying to draw attention to campaign contributions that she's received from businesses, including Charter Communications. So I think you've got these dueling narratives in terms of who's really on the side of the people, and voters are ultimately decide that for themselves. In terms of Governor Cuomo, I guess there's advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, he doesn't want to get too tightly connected with the governor. That doesn't help Brindisi electorally. At the same time, the governor gets involved, then you've got statewide media coverage and some national media coverage as well. So it's kind of a mixed bag, as I see it.
I want to play part of the ad here from Brindisi where There might be a bit of overreach in the ad. He says that the spectrum is, what's the quote? Is there not underwriting, but well, let's just play it. We'll hear it.
If you're watching this ad on Spectrum Cable, you're getting ripped off.
That's a pretty bold start to it, Luke, right there.
It is.
Yeah, it's clearly deliberately provocative.
Yeah.
I wonder if they were trying, if they were hoping to sort of have something like this happen. I don't know, but it's certainly provocative.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going to ask that question next. The question would be, and think about this, is it good for Anthony Brindisi that Spectrum has refused to play the ad? I'll ask you that coming up. I think that's...
Bankroll is the word, by the way.
Bankroll is and let's listen to it.
Spectrum has jacked up rates almost double. I'm Anthony Brindisi, and it's why I fought to have the state take legal action against Spectrum. Congress needs to go after them, too, but Claudia Tenney's campaign is bankrolled by Spectrum.
All right, in fairness, two $2,500 contributions. Is he doing the same overreach that Claudia Tenney's doing on the other side?
Seems like there's a bit of hyperbole there, for sure. Again, Tenney's kind of doing this with the Pelosi contributions, and so both sides are trying to make light of contributors in a way that's unflattering for their opponent.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that kind of came out in the messaging of what you played is this idea that Tenney is unresponsive to the needs of the people, and I think that'll be a theme of Brindisi's negative attacks of her moving forward as well.
Can I ask you, so there's the $5,000 from Spectrum to Tenney, and Tenney keeps bringing up, which I think is $14,000 from Pelosi, or tied to Pelosi, to Brindisi. I think $10,000 from her own campaign, and then $4,000 from PACs that she's associated with. Is it now he's come out and said he's not going to support her for speaker if he wins. Does she back all Democrats? Why would she give him almost $15,000 if he's not going to support her? Or is that a common thing with her being in a leadership role that she just supports any Democrat who needs $10,000?
It's the latter. Pelosi doesn't care if Democrats running for office this cycle come out and support her or not. She just wants to win control of the House, and she'll do what she can to help with that. So the public positioning about her leadership and that kind of stuff, I don't think is a primary concern. So one of the things that all leaders, Republican and Democrat, at the national level in Congress do well is raise money. And Pelosi has raised money very well for many years, and she's going to continue to do that in an effort to help Democrats regain control of the House. I don't think there's a direct connection or expectation of legislative behavior on behalf of Democrats when they get in office. What you will see informally, and I've encountered this interviewing people over the years who are Democrats, they might be a little less likely publicly to criticize Pelosi or the leader who has helped them raise money because of that. But in terms of voting record or how overall it influences the way a legislator does his or her job, it's minimal.
So Jim Zecca, I'm sorry, just quickly, sent me this picture. This is from 233. Take a look at this. It's a billboard. It's got Brindisi in the middle, Cuomo on one side, Pelosi on the other. And I just wonder how much that will hurt him. The fact that
I'll tell you this, and Luke, and I've heard this from Republicans, and I've heard it often. So it's something that this negative the campaigning, this tying him to Pelosi, I think it is having a little impact, even though we're hearing the polling that Brindisi is up. But I have heard from Republicans saying, I like Anthony Brindisi. Listen, I'm going to give you the exact quote, even though somebody might not like it. I like Anthony Brindisi. I don't really like Claudia Tenney, but I cannot vote for a Democrat to give Nancy Pelosi the power over the country and over the president. I mean, I've heard that more than once.
Well, I think, so as a political scientist thinking about power, first the Democrats have to win control for her to have significant power. Now, most analysts think that could happen, but certainly, 23 seats is a lot of gains. Mm-hmm. So there's no certainty there. Then beyond that, Pelosi would have to be elected leader. So, of course, she has a decent chance, at least, of doing that, but she's faced leadership challenges in the past. She will face a leadership challenge if the Democrats win in the future as well. So there's no certainty that she'll be elected. Then, even if she is, right, to suggest that she's got significant power in D.C., I think is not exactly accurate either, because President Trump will still control the executive branch. Mitch McConnell will still control the Senate, most likely, because I think it's probable that the Republicans are going to hold on to the Senate. So then you've got 2/3 of the major institutions in Washington controlled by Republican leaders who are already placed, and then you have whoever the Democratic leader will be in the House if they're successful in regaining that. So even in that structure, she's going to have limited power. Now, that doesn't mean that she has no influence as to what happens. Of course, I mean, the Democrats, whether it's Pelosi or somebody else, are going to try to be opposed to a lot of what the Republicans do, particularly, obviously, the stuff they disagree with. So, I think it might be a little overstated. I understand if people don't like Nancy Pelosi and that's guiding their voting behavior. Sure, I get that. But when I think about it in terms of power and how that works, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of who's going to be the leader, and if the Democrats win the House, whoever it is going to have limited power anyhow.
But it is telling you that this negative campaigning, tying the two together, is having an effect, at least on Republicans. Those in the middle, probably not so much. But, okay, so here's the question. If you're watching this ad on Spectrum Cable, you're getting ripped off. So Spectrum says, we're not playing the ad. Anthony comes back and says, I can't believe they're not playing the ad. Holds a press conference. It's in the news. We're talking about it today. All press is good press. If they're talking about you, make sure they spell your name correctly. Is that the case here?
Well, respectfully, I don't agree with the idea that, and I know you're not saying this necessarily, that all press is good press. I think,
well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, and I say that sincerely because the president does subscribe to that philosophy, and it's controversial.
Yes.
But in terms of your particular question, in this case, it's good press for Brindisi in the sense that it has him as someone who standing up again for the people who he's arguing are getting ripped off by a big corporation that doesn't care about them. And then, oh, by the way, that corporation donates to his opponent, and she's unresponsive. So it's accentuating all the things that he wants to accentuate, which I think from a campaign perspective is positive. I imagine he would think for him.
Yeah, I agree. And you brought up an interesting point when you just kind of threw it out there. Not sure if this was the actual intention, if the Brindisi campaign kind of had a feeling that we put this out there, Spectrum's not going to run it, and it's going to turn out to be bigger than it would had the Spot just ran 150 times. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, to be clear, that's just external sort of thinking out loud. I have no idea. But that first line in particular, as you pointed out, is pretty strong. So,
it's pretty strong.
It provoked a response for sure.
The closer we get, the more enjoyable the conversation gets. I got to tell you, Luke Perry, we really appreciate it, and we will do this again.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Luke Perry, by the way, it's NY22 Minute. You can search for it. Google it. It's up there. And really quite interesting. He's followed this thing right from the beginning, and I think quite fairly, to be honest with you.
I totally agree with you. I also agree with your point because I have heard from some Republicans who expressed what you expressed, that the Republicans, they like Trump.
Like Trump. I like Anthony.
They like Anthony.
I just don't. And I don't necessarily like Claudia. But I couldn't vote for Anthony because, and there's a couple of reasons, because of Pelosi, or because if the Democrats get control, they're going to impeach Trump. There's a few reasons there. But ultimately, I've heard it more than once. And when you start hearing things 3, 4, 5 times, you begin to think, and I know it's not scientific, but you got to be thinking there's a bit of a movement there.
Could someone, I would love to hear from someone, though, who loves Trump but doesn't like Claudia. I think they're very similar in approach, right? As far as bucking the administration, and there's several things, I think. I would love to hear from someone, what is it about Claudia you don't like? If you love Trump, how do you not like her? I just would love to hear it.
All right.